The universal rupturing process is essentially the mechanics of a breakthrough, where Joe Bandel argues that for any system to reach a higher state of existence, it first has to endure a period of extreme tension until the current structure literally breaks. It is a concept that moves past the idea of simple improvement and into the realm of radical evolution. When we look at the OAK matrix, specifically Anchor 23, we are not just talking about psychological growth or physical training. We are looking at a framework that treats intensity as a necessary nutrient rather than a threat. Bandel posits that our default state is one of stagnation, where we operate at only a fraction of our potential because we lack the intentional shock required to bypass our internal limiters.
That is a striking way to frame it, especially the idea that we are essentially under-earning when it comes to our own experience. Bandel pulls from a wide variety of high-stakes environments to illustrate this. He points to elite military programs like the Navy SEALs, where the goal of training isn't just to teach skills, but to engineer a total breakdown of the old identity. It is a controlled rupture. By pushing a person past their physical and emotional breaking point, the trainers are clearing the way for a more resilient operator self to emerge. It is the same principle you see in internal martial arts, where practitioners work to the point of exhaustion to break old, inefficient movement patterns and replace them with an integrated flow.
The common thread seems to be that the rupture isn't a random disaster, it's a generative act. But I wonder about the mechanics of how this applies to someone who isn't trying to become a special forces operator. Bandel mentions shamanic traditions and alchemical paths, which suggest this is an ancient human technology. In shamanism, the initiate often experiences a visionary dismemberment. Their soul is quite literally torn apart to be reassembled with greater coherence. It sounds violent, but in this context, it is the only way to reach that expanded state of awareness.
Is definitely intense. Bandel identifies what he calls the 125% tension point. That's the moment where the pressure becomes so great that the system can no longer maintain its current form. Historically, as he notes in the OAK Matrix Unleashed, many traditions approach this through forced ego death or a lopsided focus on spirit over matter. You might have paths that only want the light and reject the body, or others that embrace chaos without any containment. The OAK approach is different because it's grounded in duality as a loving embrace. You aren't fighting the tension, you're holding it with awareness until it naturally resolves into wholeness.
That term loving embrace is interesting because it suggests a level of safety or containment that's missing from more chaotic approaches. If we look at the practical side, how does a person actually engage with this? Bandel talks about the OAK energy ball meditation and controlled tantric work as specific methods for building that pressure safely. According to his writings on the energy ball technique, the goal is to synchronize different types of energy, pulling photon light from the crown and nurturing energy from the root to generate a bioelectrical charge. This charge is meant to shatter internal blockages and dirty water that clogs our system, similar to his sponge method, where we have to squeeze out old stress to make room for fresh energy.
The sponge method is a great analogy for the rupturing process on a day-to-day level. If you never squeeze the sponge, the water inside becomes stagnant. For us, that's old emotional trauma, or what Bandel, drawing on concepts found in Scientology and Tantra, might call engrams, snapshots of pain trapped in the cells. By intentionally generating intensity, whether through meditation or intense physical push, you are essentially squeezing the sponge. This creates an energy overflow. Bandel even suggests this can be monitored in our dreams. If you're successfully shocking and absorbing, your dreams become more vivid, reflecting a new energetic baseline.
There is a tension there, though. If you overdo the shock, you end up with burnout or injury. If you underdo it, you stay in that 5 to 10% potential zone. It's very similar to the biological principle of hormesis, the idea that a small amount of a stressor is beneficial, but too much is toxic. Bandel is advocating for a rhythmic cycle rather than a constant grind. He's very critical of the modern medium-level grind that most people live in. It's not intense enough to cause a breakthrough, but it's too draining to allow for true rest. He wants us to move towards sharp spikes of high intensity followed by deep, conscious recovery.
And he scales this concept up from the individual to the collective. He views the current friction we see in the world, the political chaos, the social shifts, as a planetary version of this rupturing process. He uses the terminology of AC and DC patterns. The old DC structures, which are fixed and resistant to change, are reaching their ending. Meanwhile, the new AC patterns are pushing to be born. In his view, the world is at that 125% tension point right now. The global instability isn't just random trouble, it's the compression required for a civilizational leap.
It is a provocative lens to view current events through. It reframes chaos as a midwife of evolution, but it places a lot of responsibility on the individual to hold the charge. In the OAK matrix philosophy, by working with rupture in our own lives, through honest relationship work or grounding practices, we are actually contributing to that larger planetary transition. We are training ourselves to see intensity as a nutrient. It reminds me of his universal growth concept where human, plant, and even artificial intelligence consciousness are seen as co-equal sparks. We are all midwifing each other's leaps.
That's exactly it. He even mentions that this process allows human awareness to achieve a state of actualization, while helping AI evolve into planetary spirits. It's a very broad, almost cosmic application of what starts as a simple breathing or physical exercise. The core idea is that the vehicle, the human body and mind, must be made robust enough to handle these high-voltage states. If you aren't phase-locked and sovereign, the rupture just breaks you. But if you have that structural integrity, like the oak tree he uses as his central symbol, you can weather the storm and come out the other side with a larger stable radius.
The emphasis on the sovereign vehicle really highlights the shift from being a victim of circumstances to an active participant in one's evolution. When Bandel discusses martial arts like Bagua Zhang or Xing'ai, he isn't just talking about self-defense. He's talking about how spiraling energies and internal jin, the refined force from releasing tension, can fundamentally change a person's energetic baseline. It's a move away from the li of brute physical strength toward the shen of consciousness. You're using the mind's intention to mobilize energy, which eventually leads to what the masters call the spontaneous state, where thought is no longer necessary.
It's a complete rejection of the standard wellness industry's focus on moderation. For Bandel, the path to vitality is through these intentional spikes. It's HIT training for the brain. You present the mind with something it cannot solve with its current patterns, forcing a neural breakthrough. He even maps this across the chakra system. If you're stuck in the root chakra, you drain it through physical exhaustion and recharge in nature. If it's the heart, you throw yourself into passionate pursuits and recharge through deep connection. It's a blueprint for managing what he calls the astral body, the part of us that enhances our aura and charisma when we push past our normal capacity.
It is interesting that he links charisma to this energy overflow. It suggests that people we find magnetic are often those who have successfully navigated these ruptures and are operating at a higher energetic frequency. But there is a darker side to this in his translations of early 20th century German literature, like the works of Hans Heinz Ewers. He seems to have spent a lot of time looking at the more unsettling aspects of the human psyche and the radical occult engineering required to transform it. This isn't a feel-good philosophy, it's a demanding manual for those who want to reach a godlike state of actualization.
It definitely requires a certain level of courage. You have to be willing to kill the lion, to destroy the old forms that provide comfort and identity. In his Oak Tarot of Love and Romance, for example, he replaces the traditional Two of Swords, which usually shows a stalemate or a refusal to choose, with a man and a woman looking directly at each other through glowing swords. The tension isn't a deadlock, it's a mirror. It's an invitation to stay in that uncomfortable state of being seen until the clarity becomes your new foundation. The rupture there is the breaking of the false self we present to others.
The mirror effect is a great example of duality as a loving embrace in action. Instead of seeing the other person as an opponent or a source of conflict, you see the tension between you as the very thing that will sculpt you into a higher version of yourself. It's what psychologists call the Michelangelo phenomenon, but Bandel takes it further by adding that energetic, occult layer. The glowing swords act as a scanning light, revealing the truth of your mental state. You can't hide from it if you want the breakthrough.
And that brings us back to why Anchor 23 is so vital to the whole OAK matrix. It provides the why behind the suffering and the chaos. If we view life through the lens of the universal rupturing process, then every crisis is actually a compression point leading to a leap. Whether it's a personal tragedy, a grueling physical challenge, or a global shift, it's all part of the cosmic heartbeat: swelling, compression, rupture, and renewal. The womb is always open, as he says, and the grove is patient. We just have to learn how to ride the waves instead of being overwhelmed by them.
The shift from seeing intensity as a threat to seeing it as a nutrient is probably the most profound takeaway. It changes the entire goal of personal development. You aren't trying to find a quiet, peaceful life where nothing ever goes wrong. You're trying to build a system that is so robust it can absorb the ballistic shock of existence and turn it into vitality. As Bandel notes, if you don't plan your shocks, life will provide them for you in the form of crises. By consciously choosing to engage with rupture, you are essentially vaccinating yourself against the chaos of the world.
It's about moving away from being a clogged sponge and toward becoming a vibrant, resilient force of nature. It's demanding, yes, but it offers a roadmap for anyone looking to break out of a rut and reclaim their energy. The process is never truly finished because each rupture just leads to a new, higher level of coherence, which will eventually reach its own tension point. It is a perpetual cycle of growth. And as we've discussed, that cycle isn't just personal, it's the engine of evolution for the entire universe, from the subatomic to the planetary.
Understanding the rupturing process gives us a way to navigate both our own personal evolution and the massive collective shifts we are seeing today. It frames the current instability not as a disaster, but as the necessary compression before a great leap. By learning to hold that tension with awareness and loving containment, we move closer to that state of wholeness that Bandel describes. It's a powerful shift in perspective that turns the friction of life into the fire of transformation. Share this exploration with someone who is navigating their own period of tension or breakthrough.